So,
So, hello everyone. Yes, sorry, I'll
yeah.
just want to say a couple of words. Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So, today we have Kamola Muradkasimova. She has PhD in philology, is it? Or pedagogy?
Pedagogy.
Pedagogy. Uh,
Methodology, yes.
methodology. So
Mhm.
she has been working at the Uzbekistan State World Languages University for many years. She has been involved in several British Council and other local and regional projects. And nowadays she's spending her time in the USA as part of the Faculty Enrichment Program. So welcome, Kamola. Over to you.
Thank you so much. So, good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, dear American colleagues, and good evening, dear Uzbekistan colleagues from Uzbekistan. I'm very glad to see you all today. Thank you for giving such opportunity to share webinar with you. And I would like to share Nodrapa for organizing such a wonderful event for us, for teachers, for educators, because this is the best chance to share ideas, to share experiences, and bring the best practices to our teaching and learning process. So my name is Kamola Muradkasimova. I'm an AFL teacher at Uzbekistan State World Languages University. And for this year, 2020, I was a finalist of the FAP program, which stands for Faculty Enrichment Program, which is supported by American Councils in Uzbekistan. And for spring semester, for more than 4 months, I was placed to Wisconsin Eau-Claire University in Wisconsin State. Little information about the FAP program. You can actually find the information on fap.americancouncils.org website. This is the website of this program. But I will give you brief information about the steps or stages. So if you are planning to apply to this program runs twice a year, for spring semester and for fall semester. For fall semester for 2020, the application is already closed. I guess the finalists are also ready. They have chosen already. While applying to this program, you will have 3 stages of like applying or examination, 3 stages. The first one is writing an application and writing, if I'm not mistaken, there were 5 or 4 essays. If you pass the first, you are welcome to the second one, which is TOEFL test. And after that, you have the third stage, which is the interview with the American colleagues and coordinators from Washington, D.C. So if you successfully pass all these 3 stages, you'll be placed to one of these states of USA, depending on your project proposal. For spring semester 2020, we were 10 teachers, 10 educators from different parts of Uzbekistan with the different areas of investigation, and we are placed to different states of USA. Now we are doing our research and working on our proposal. And the advantage of this program is that you will have a great opportunity, you will have a great chance to observe the courses. You will choose the courses, at least 4 courses to observe based on your major. And you will find the new approaches, investigate new methodology, and you have to apply these investigations in Uzbekistan in our educational system, and you'll have to make a presentation on your investigations. So this was the brief information, Nandrupa, about FAP. Let us continue. So for today, the objective of the webinar is, upon the successful completion of the following webinar, teachers will be able to create their own course objectives by using all 4 components. This is the objective for today's webinar, and later at the end of the webinar, we will come back and reflect to this objective once again. I would like to start my presentation with the statement. I heard this statement in one of the classes while observing on foundations of education in the University of Wisconsin Eau-Claire, but I do not remember the source. It was on the video. I'm sorry for not citing this, but I like it very much. I remember this because I think as the teachers, as educators, this statement directly referred to us because we have to do our best to make the learning and schooling process more productive and more practical. The statement says, there is no child who doesn't like learning. There is a child who doesn't like schooling. So let's continue. As a leading of the webinar, I would like to ask you to read this small case study. Could you please all take a minute to read the case study and share your ideas on what is the problem in this case study? And if you share the solution, you're very welcome. That will be very much appreciated. Please take a minute to read and share with us what is the problem and how can this problem be solved. Nandrapa, can we ask participants to unmute themselves and share their ideas?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so if we have volunteers, you are welcome to unmute yourself and share your ideas.
Any volunteers? Oh, everyone's sleepy.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr talking from Webster University.
Hi, Laura.
So, as I know here, the problem is with the testing. So, testing principles are violated.
Yes, absolutely right. Thank.
Firstly,
Anybody else?
She teaches communicative English, but in the essay she's asking to write the meaning of it, but it doesn't encourage communication. And in
right.
the second turn, we've got here that test could occur anytime during the week. So this is also affecting the reliability of this course.
Reliability and practicality, yes, absolutely. You're right. Do you have any ideas how can we solve this problem?
Okay, Shafnoza, are you raising your hand? Do you want to say something? No? Sahiba? No?
I guess Sahiba was raising her hand.
Yes.
Okay. If you do not have any ideas, right. Gulnora, yes, Gulnora, she was absolutely right. The problem here that Mrs. X has problems on designing, evaluating, assessment methods and techniques. So this case study makes us to think about the role of the teacher in assessment process, and it makes us to think about the level of the competence in assessment, right? And the problem bring us to think about the emergence of one of the concepts that we call teachers' language assessment literacy. What is language assessment literacy? So Roger Stiggins says, as he mentioned, and he was the first person who worked on this area, he says that teachers, they have to know what they are assessing, why they are doing it, how best to assess the skill, knowledge of interest, how to generate good examples of student performance, what can potentially go wrong with the assessment, and how to prevent that from happening. So language assessment literacy is very important nowadays. There are 5 levels of assessment literacy, starting from illiteracy to multidimensional literacy. So illiteracy is ignorance of language assessment concepts and methods. Nominal literacy is understanding that specific term relates to assessment but may indicate a misconception. Functional literacy is sound understanding of basic procedural and conceptual literacy is understanding central concepts of the field and using knowledge in practice. And multidimensional literacy is knowledge extending beyond ordinary concepts, like including philosophical, historical, and social dimensions of assessment. As a teachers, as a practical teachers and educators, we have to have a procedural or conceptual level of literacy in assessment. This level requires teachers to in choosing, developing, administering, scoring assessment methods. The main problem, the gap is that how academic staff view teaching learning process. For academic staff, for us educators, assessment is often the final consideration in planning the curriculum or the syllabus. And usually assessment is considered once the curriculum or syllabus decisions have been made. This is the biggest problem. The primary concern of us, of teachers, is what course content should be taught, what should students learn. First, we think about what should we teach and what materials, methods, approach, or techniques to bring to the class and which of them are most appropriate. And after that, at the last position, we think about how can student learning be assessed. The same problem happened with Mrs. X. Her concern was teaching and thinking about what materials to bring to the course. And at the end, when time comes to assess or meet scores or the final examination, she started to think about the assessment. That is why there is the gap between the learning, teaching, and assessment process in her experience. So the question of the day today is, what are the important components that should be, in the objective? What do you think? What are the important elements that should be in the objective? As a teachers, we all write our course objectives, right? We all have course objective or the class or the lesson objective. What do you think? What are the elements? Or as you can reflect to your experience and share with us your experience, what do you usually, or what elements you usually include to your objectives? Can I again ask you to unmute yourself and share your ideas with us?
I wanted to share my idea about objectives.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, yes, I'm Yuldasheva Zainab Kamilovna from Khwarezm Urgench State University.
Okay.
If we design for sure in lesson plan, we just give the objectives in the beginning. For example, it's for focusing on the topic, which topic we are going to include the objectives for related to these plans. For sure, for example, if you are including any kind of topic, as you talked about explaining modal verbs, for example, for sure, the objectives should correlate it for this the main aim of the plan, main aim of the lesson. And then we will have, while designing the plans, we will have problems and possible solution for those problems. So teachers should see what is going on before. For example, we are facilitators, we are developer of the materials. While we are designing the material, and for sure what kind of problems may occur while we give these handouts for the student. And then we may create about, we may say about the problems and what kind of problems may occur and what kind of possible solutions we may also give. They are all the related points in the planning the lesson, as one as a lesson objectives of the lesson.
Objectives of the class, right? Thank you so much, Zenna Papa. Thank you. Anybody else would like to share?
Good morning, Kamola.
Experience.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Hilal Uralov from Uzbekistan State World Language University, and I have got an idea about this question.
Okay.
Well, we all have different lesson plans and their course objectives, and usually we have got one aim and several objectives, yeah? And
Right.
these objectives can be different, and they should conclude or consist of different ways of, how to say, achieving this certain aim. That is my just opinion about it. And then these elements, for example, let's say our aim is just improving reading or fluency, let's say. Our objectives can be different ways of achieving this aim, for example, by learning, scanning, or skimming. These kind of steps can be elements of objectives to my mind.
Okay, absolutely right. Thank you so much, Hilal. Anybody else? Your ideas are very much appreciated. Anyone wants to share with us?
Can I?
Yes.
I'm Umida Khaidarova from Law University.
Good morning. Good evening, Umida.
As Rodbolaita taught us, they should be smart objectives. Smart, each letter stands for different words. For instance, specific for as measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know about these objectives because I knew that objectives were like materials should be relevant, about the validity, reliability, practicability. Everything should be taken into account. But yeah, smart objectives, to my opinion, always occur all the parts, all the elements of the lesson plan, and we know that lesson plans usually do not follow all the details that you have planned because of the improvisation, because of the students' perspectives and their level, it always changes. So I always appreciate these smart objectives, and we should apply them into the lesson. Thank you.
Thank you, Minapa. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, ladies, for your answers. Let's continue. So I would ask you to take a minute again and look through these examples of objectives. Here you can see 4 objectives. I want you to think to look through the objective first and choose one which you think is the best one. And if you do not mind, justify your answer, why you have chosen this exact objective, okay? A minute to look through and share your ideas. Which one is the best to your mind and why? Anybody wants to share?
Well, I think these objectives are quite different. And the first one is not kind of smart objective. as my
Okay.
colleagues told. And the second one, I think it's not objective of lesson. And the third one is very specific and detailed. But I think it is too much maybe.
Mhm.
And the last one, writing a complaint letter, I think it is definitely the best one to my mind.
The best one is the last one, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Hilola, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilola, for
Kamola,
sharing.
may I share my answer?
Yes, you are very welcome.
Good afternoon, dear
Good-
colleagues, once more again. So I think the first objective is most essential one. Students will be able to do a research. So why I am thinking like this? Because when students are able to do a research, they can manage the time. They can manage their task skills. They can do library research, internet search. To cut a long story short, they are able to work in this sphere, in science sphere. That's why the most objective is crucial one.
So
This
you
is my
like the
opinion.
first objective, right?
Yes, I like this one because I teach ISS course for students, independent study skills, and usually I teach them to do and how to do research, how to work on research. That's why I suppose this first one is important one.
The first one is
Thank
the
you.
best one or
Yeah,
successful.
best one. Yeah, I guess this
Best
one is best one for me.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on then. Actually, none of these objectives were good. All of them are problematic. So there are some typical problems encountered when writing the objectives. And here you can see 4 problems that usually occur, usually we come across with. The first is too vast or complex objective. So the example with students will be able to create, apply, and judge relevant examples and express the significance of philosophical question. This is not successful objective because it has more than one objective. Each desired behavior should be identified in different objectives. And in this example, we have 3 behaviors: create, apply, and judge. So it's too complex. This example should be divided into 3 different objectives. Another problem that we come across is no behavior to evaluate. The example of the objective was students will enjoy writing scientific articles. Again, this is very problematic objective because there is no behavior to evaluate. The active verb enjoy, or the behavior, the active verb that presents the behavior enjoy, is not measurable. We cannot measure enjoyment or the enjoy of students. This is not measurable active verb or the behavior. So we consider this objective as not successful one. Another problem is only topics are listed in objectives. The example was writing a complaint letter. Here we can see just a topic, and there is no any other information. We don't know how we expect our students to use the information, what we want them to do till the end of the course, or what we want them to achieve. So it's also not successful objective. And the last one is vague, very vague objective. Example is students will be able to do research. Why this is vague objective? Because it's open to many interpretations. It's not very much clear here. What do we want from students? Do we want them to identify an appropriate research question? Or do we want them to review the literature? Maybe we want our students to be able to establish the hypothesis or use research questions or terminology. Maybe we want them to be able to collect the data and other, like, and etc. So also, as you see, this is very like broad, very much broad objective, and we do not consider it as successful one. Okay. So here are some characteristics of a successful objective you can see on the screen. So objective should be observable and measurable. It should be unambiguous. It should be result-oriented, clearly written and specific. Objective should be measurable by both quantitative and qualitative criteria. Objective should communicate a successful learning in behavioral terms and written in terms of performance. So keeping in mind these characteristics of writing a good objective, we can think about 4 parts of writing objective that will help to make it more successful and that will help us to meet the successful characteristics. So there are 4 important parts in writing objective. It should be student-centered, it should be action-oriented, it should include action verb, it should be specific to the content, and objective should be measurable. So in other sources, you can find the other interpretation of these 4 parts of successful objective, which say A, B, C, D method of writing objective. So where A stands for audience, describes the intended learner or the user of the instruction. This is student. B stands for behavior, describes the learner capability, that is action verb. C stands for condition, equipment or tool that may be utilized in completion of the behavior, that is content. And D stands for degree, states the standards for acceptable performance in terms of time, accuracy, proportion, quality, etc. And this is being measurable. So these are the 4 important parts in writing successful objective. While writing the objective, if we reflect to these 4 parts, you can consider your objective successful. So in order to make it measurable and in order to choose the appropriate active verb, the best thing to reflect is the cognitive levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. I think you know this pyramid, you saw this pyramid, Bloom's taxonomy, which has 6 levels of cognition. Remember is for recalling facts. Understanding is for explaining the ideas or concepts. Applying is for information, using new information in new situation. Analyzing is for drawing connections about the ideas. Evaluation is for justifying your decision. And creation is to produce new work. So here it's important to mention law, orders, and other 4, starting from applying and creating, they require high order thinking. And if you pay attention, if each level has the active verbs, and this is what we have to reflect or face to while writing the course objective. These active verbs, they serve as the behavior in our objective, okay? So, as I've mentioned, Bloom's taxonomy, levels of Bloom's taxonomy and action verbs, they serve as an active verb, as the behavior in our objectives. But there are passive verbs that we have to avoid in writing objective. They are the following: appreciate, enjoy, learn, believe, know, and understand. These are passive verbs because they are not measurable. We cannot measure these verbs. If you remember, in one of these four objectives, examples of objectives above we have discussed earlier, was saying students will enjoy writing research, right? Or students will enjoy writing an article. It was not successful objective because it includes a passive verb enjoy, which is not measurable. Okay, now let's practice. You can see here two objectives, examples of objectives. I want you to take a minute again to read these objectives and share with us your ideas and findings. What do you think? Which one is the good, and whether both of these objectives include 4 parts of writing successful objectives? Okay? Take a minute, please, and identify whether these objectives have all 4 parts. You can reflect to A, B, C, D on the left side. Audience, behavior, condition, and degree. Do these objectives have all 4 components or all 4 parts?
Sorry, Miss Kamola, can you just put
Go
this
back?
slide? Yeah, A, B, C, D.
Yes, definitely. Just a second. This one you mean, right?
Yeah, this one.
4 parts, okay.
Well, can I begin my discussions about these 2 objectives? So the first one is, yeah, there is audience because it's all about assessment educators after finishing the practice with the basic principles. They will be able to evaluate the scenario not less than 30% of mastery. Well, here audience are assessment educators, I mean the learners, am I right? And then behavior, it should be measurable and observable, and we have got C. Yeah, they can do the task or until 80% of mastery. So it is, if I'm not mistaken, degree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
So,
Absolutely right.
yeah. So these are objective can be considered kind of good because I can see here audience, behavior, also the task itself, and the C one. Sorry, I forgot C. And the D one is the degree of
Condition,
this accomplishment and condition.
condition and degree, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Hilola. Anybody else would like to share ideas on the second objective? Anyone?
Kamola, here, Upon successful completion of the required coursework, they will be able to implement the presentation stage. Here to implement, it means to show how they acquire the skills they should demonstrate. And here maybe the conditions are meant, if I'm not mistaken. And the behavior here, they should perform. Yeah, the skill or behavior, they have to show how they understood this, how they differentiated from the previous knowledge they obtained before about the second. And the criteria here, I think, about the measure, the degree. Yeah, about the degree. I'm not so sure about the degree in the second.
I would speak about the scenario at some touristic university. You know that international tourism is a great trouble nowadays, and many companies would like to go to shift to inner tourism. The teacher can organize a group, audience, target audience, with people from regions, because he stays in Tashkent, organize a group with content and prepare something, performance very needed in life, and presented in real touristic sector. It will be live essays, it will be live research, it will be authentic writing, contributing to needs of tourism in Uzbekistan. Because tourism people do not speak English, our students are speaking, and therefore it will be good results.
Okay. Halimapa, thank you for sharing your ideas. Okay, let's move. So you can see here, I've colored these objectives by focusing on the 4 parts. The first objective, as our colleague mentioned, has all 4 components, all 4 parts. We can consider it successful. Like after accomplishing the practice with the basic principles of assessment, educators will be able to evaluate the scenario not less than 80% of mastery. The audience here, educators. So our audience can vary, like if you have students, your audience. If you teach at school, pupils are your audience, yes? If you are teacher trained, educators or teachers are your audience. So here the audience is educators. Behavior, what we want them to be able to do is they will be able to evaluate the scenario. This is the behavior. We want them to be able to evaluate the scenario. The condition, under what circumstances they have to accomplish the task. This is after accomplishing the practice with the basic principles of assessment. So they have condition and degree, how we're going to measure them, not less than 80% of mastery. If you remember, in this slide, when I presented degree and we talk about it should be measurable, it can be in terms of, we can present the degree in the form of time, we can present in form of accuracy, proportion, quality, or percent, as we did in this example, okay? So we can mention the time, proportion, percent, or the other things that can be measured by teacher. So the second objective, it is not successful because it has only 3 components. There is no degree, as Hilola, if I'm not mistaken, mentioned. Upon successful completion of the required coursework, students will be able to implement the presentation stages. The audience here, students, behavior, we want them to be able to implement presentation stages at the end of the class. And condition, upon successful completion of the required coursework, but how we gonna measure them, whether in time construct or in the by using the score or percentages, how do we measure There is no information about that. So the second objective is not successful, as it's missing one component of writing successful objective. So in this table, I would like to share with you some examples for learning objectives, types of assessment, and how to measure them. These are just examples I've presented. They can vary depending on your objective, depending on what is your learning objective, in what type of assessment you are designing for your learners, and how you are going to measure them, okay? So you can see here types of learning objectives. I put the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. There are 6. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Verbs of levels as the learning objectives behavior we want learners to be able to present. But I didn't include active verbs. You can find them on the earlier slide where I presented the pyramid. In each level, you see the active verbs. You can reflect, you have to reflect to these active verbs actually. In order to save space, I just put the levels. So to each learning objective, I present some types of assessment and how can they be measured. For example, let's see the level of understanding. You will choose the active verbs for understanding that you would like your learners to present. And type of assessment can be, so this level activities such as papers, exams, problem sets, class discussion, or concept maps that require students to summarize the reading, films, or speech. They can require learners to compare and contrast the series. They can require, the learners to classify or categorize the events, cases, or elements. They can require students to paraphrase documents or speech and find or identify examples of a concept or principles. It depends on each teacher. It depends on the teaching and learning process, depending on which level you have chosen, depending on which learning active verbs and behavior you have chosen, you can reflect to the types of assessment. And how they can be measured by scoring or performance rubric. So let's see one more. Let's say for analyzing, yes, the types of assessment for analyzing can be case study, critiques, labs, projects, debates. They require learners to discriminate or select relevant or irrelevant parts. They require learners to determine how elements function together. They help to determine biases, values, or underlying intent in presented material. Again, it depends, it can vary depending on your course objective and what behavior or active verb you are using. And how we can measure, again, by rubrics, which are scored by instructor, or they can be scored by juries, or you can implement group working or pair working, peer assessment or self-assessment by providing the rubric. Here, I would like to mention one more thing, which is very much important. Actually, we have 4 types of rubrics: analytic, holistic, multi-trait, and primary trait rubrics. I didn't include this information in this webinar because it's huge information and this is a very good topic to discuss in next webinars, if you would like. The important thing I would like to mention here is that rubric or the criteria that we are going or planning to evaluate our learners should be presented at the beginning of the course or at the beginning of the semester or before assigning your task. So learners should be able to know what they are not should, they must be aware of what they are expected to present at the end of the semester or at the end of the lesson, at the end of the course, unit, etc. That will be very good if you design a rubric together with your learners that will bring more reliability, practicality, and most of all, validity of your teaching, learning, and assessment process. Okay? So, we are coming to the end of the webinar. And as I mentioned earlier, I would like to reflect to the objective of today's webinar once again. My objective was, upon the successful completion of the following webinar, teachers will be able to create their own course objective by using all 4 components. So as you see, my objective has all 4 parts, and I think this objective was successful. And I hope that not only objective, but the whole webinar was successful, productive, and practical for you. Another one important thing to mention here is, at the beginning, this was the objective of my webinar, but now at the end, it became as an outcome of the webinar. Okay? What is the difference between objective and the outcome? The objectives are intended to results or consequences of instruction, curriculum, program, or the activity, while objectives are achieved results or consequences of what was learned. I hope that my objective now is serve as an outcome, and you learn, you could achieve, and you could learn something from this webinar. I hope you like it. I hope it was productive and useful. Actually, this is the end of the webinar. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to write or to unmute yourself. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Kamola. That was really very specific, and I think it was very clear. People, I hope, that learned to use the 4 criteria while creating their course objective or lesson objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think we have some questions. Can you see the chat box?
How can I see the chat box?
Okay, hold on. If you, okay.
Stop sharing? Should I stop
you
sharing?
can. Yeah, you can stop sharing, and then probably you will be able to see that. Yeah. Can you see the chat now?
Yes.
Okay.
Kamola, thank you. Thank you, Ms. It was helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the webinar. How to assess fill in the blanks. Actually, fill in the blank, as I have mentioned earlier, the first levels of Bloom's taxonomy, they require low order thinking. And for remembering, we usually, in the table you can see, if you reflect to the presentation, in the table you can see for remembering, filling the gap, close, multiple choice, matching methods. These methods do not require rubric because we use this method of assessment while assessing receptive skills, and we consider assessing receptive skill as an objective assessment because there is no need for teacher judgment or teacher reflection. As results are shown, we have the results. Our task is just to compare whether the answer was correct or not, yes or no. Okay, fill in the blank, it's subjective assessment. For effective webinars. Thank you. Thanks million. Thank you so much. It's really nice to hear so many thanks. It was very useful for us. This is the great idea assessment object. Thank you. Thank you also, Gulnarapa. My colleague from USA, thank you, Gulnarapa, for being supportive. Rubric is not clear for me. Can you explain in more detail? Rubric, as I mentioned, okay, I will try to give general information on rubrics, but not very specific, okay? Because it should be, that will take much longer time. So rubric, we use rubrics to evaluate productive skills. As we said, we look through analyzing, applying, right, behaviors. In that cases, the best thing is to use rubric, as this is the productive skill. So rubric contain the criteria, and depending on what is your priority in evaluating the learner's behavior, you will design the criteria. Rubrics have 4 types, as I said: analytic rubric, holistic, multi-trait, and primary trait rubrics. They differ from each other in terms of the criteria and in terms of the what behavior or performance you are evaluating. Do you evaluate the language or behavior in integrated way, or do you evaluate the language or criteria for specific aspect of the language? Depending on what is your goal in evaluating, what do you prioritize in the presentation of learners, you will use one of these rubrics. Rubrics can include points. You can like put several, for example, successful 5, not successful 3, and failed 2. So it depending on rate. So you can rate depending on the scores, depending on the whether they were successful or not. Different designing and organizing the rubrics. It's better if you see the rubrics like on the webinar, if you see how the format itself, so that will be more comprehensible. I hope I could answer to your question. If you are interested, you can mail me. I will send you more information on language testing and assessment, as my area of investigation is language testing and assessment, and especially language teachers assessment literacy. I'm sorry for asking. So you're very welcome, Shawzika. Rubric criteria, yes. Kamola, can you say having those objectives? To listen, do you support that each lesson will be conducted with this objective? They must be right. So, Kamola. These 4 objectives. Yes, I would prefer to, while designing the objective of the course or of the lesson, to reflect to the 4 components, because learners at the beginning of the course should be aware they have a right to know what they're going to present, what behavior they are expected to present, and how they're going to be evaluated. So in order to bring, as I have mentioned earlier, in order to bring validity, practicality, and reliability, not only in assessment, but in teaching and learning process, these things, they should be presented to students at the beginning of the course or semester or the lesson. So learners should know what we want them to be able to do and how they are expected to present and how they are going to be evaluated. Okay? In distance teaching, we had to change our teaching methods. Moreover, our objectives have also changed. What do you suggest for teachers with less experience? Elmurat Nuraliyev. Moreover, our objectives are also changed. Yes, your objective can be changed, Elmuratike, in comparison with your like face-to-face classes, but still you can implement these 4 parts of writing objective in your distance teaching as we did it today. Even though you paraphrase or remake your objective, you can still think about these 4 components and reflect to them to make it more comprehensible to your learners and to you also. Thanks, Million. Thank you. That is very excellent. Rubric is essential to indicate achievement for components of students' work. Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you too. Post please your email. Yes, sure, I will. Testing in a second language is a completely different topic. Reporting statistics is just a day. Yes, as I said earlier, being literate in language testing and assessment and having a competence require teachers to be able to choose the appropriate assessment method, develop the assessment method, so items, test items, administer, score, and making statistics. So as a teachers, we have to be competent in these all stages. As Shazadeka mentioned, making statistic is just a headache, right? But statistics like item discrimination or item difficulty, these are the types of like statistics that show whether the item was successful or not. It will show, this is the good, very good way of for teachers to identify whether the test item was successful or not. Because as you know, if I have, for example, I have 20 students in my class and more than 80% of my learners failed the test, this is my fault, not my students. It means my assessment or test item was very difficult. It can be vice versa. If I have 20 students and 100%, for example, got A total point and they achieve total mastery, again, something wrong with my test item or assessment method, because it means that it was very easy for them. And this kind of statistic making test discrimination and identifying the test item difficulty will help teachers and educators to identify whether your test item is successful or not. Okay, sometimes we need to make some statistics in order to evaluate ourselves as a test designers. More questions? I'm sorry. So I guess I'll continue the topic, future focus on language skills and the rubric. What do you think? Okay, I would be very glad to. Reporting score and mean, mode, and I'm sorry, my telegram is, yes, Shazadeka. Reporting scores, mean, mode, item difficulty, this is very important. Continue focusing on objectives, short, middle, long term. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I will write my email, right? Muradkasimova @yahoo.com. Yes. So this is my email. If you are interested in language testing and assessment, or you are interested in language teachers assessment literacy, you are very welcome to email me. I will share the information or the experience that I have with you, because the best thing in teaching and learning is exchanging ideas, experiences, and bringing the best practices to learning and teaching process. I think there are no more questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time and effort. And Nodrapa, thank you very much for inviting and giving me a chance to make a webinar, run a webinar today. I hope it was useful.
Yes, thank you so much. The pleasure is all ours. Yes, I think we all enjoyed a lot. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So yeah, as usual, if you need the certificates, write in the channel, in our channel. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening or any day, part of your day, wherever you are. Yes, enjoy your day, Kamola. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
have a
you
good
very
day.
much.
Bye.
Stay safe and healthy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadirapa. Thank you, Kamalapa.